Welcome to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I am your host, Craig Pera, founder of the Mindful Habit System. You can find me on the web at www.themindfulhabit.com. And this is a podcast to help you create healthy sexuality and a great life. And today we are going to be talking about how compulsive sexual behavior is not the root cause. It is the symptom. And with me, I have my very special guest, the amazing Coach Adrian. Welcome, my man.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, as usual.
Glad you are here. And this is an important topic, Adrian, because so many people come to us treating their compulsive sexual behavior as the root cause. They come to us from a disease-based modality. They've been spending an inordinate amount of time focusing on not doing something. Give me an overview. What are we talking about today?
Well, today I want to talk a little bit about not only why we're talking about compulsive sexual behavior disorder and not sex addiction, but also what are those root causes behind compulsive sexual behaviors? Because like you said, very often we are focusing on the behavior itself, on the symptom, right?
The porn, the acting out, the massage parlors, all of the above.
Exactly. And I think that this is our main problem. This is what we want to change, right? And because we are so fixated on that, we miss actually the real issues that cause us to go to this massage parlor or to start watching porn every single day or to be unfaithful, right? So we don't look at the reasons why we're doing certain things. We look at the behavior itself. And I'm not arguing that behavior may be very problematic, but it's not the problem.
Yeah. No, and this is a really difficult realization for a lot of people who spent their lives trying not to do something. So let's unpack it now. Now, why, before we get in though to the different root causes that drive compulsive sexual behavior, why is this subject, this broadcast that we're doing now, why is this so important in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's very important because the general label that is used in most places, sex addiction, is not really covering ways of treatment that could be beneficial for clients. So to just say it in simpler words, we don't understand why we're acting out. And unless we find out exactly what's our specific issue, or set of issues, we can't find a good solution for ourselves and we can't move forward. We can't recover fully. You can't just, use willpower and stop acting out because of, your power of will. And those causes are very different. This is a multimodal problem, which means that it has many different roots. And those issues look very differently for those people who are struggling, let's say, with sexual integrity and to people who are struggling with personality disorder, for example, and that's why they're acting out, right? So I've noticed in my work with clients that I have to adjust my treatment to those root causes if I want to be effective, if I'm not taking them under consideration, and if you also, as a client or somebody that's healing, is not understanding the root cause of your problem, you're not taking it under consideration, you're going to be stuck. And I don't want you guys to be stuck. I want you to move past those behaviors.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that make the mindful habit so special is that we treat those root causes. And I think it's important to note before we dive into those root causes that sex addiction and porn addiction is not a recognized disorder in the DSM. In fact, many therapists believe that if your therapist is treating you using this model, you should have signed an informed consent document at the beginning of that therapeutic relationship that tells you right up front that not only is this not a recognized disorder in the DSM, which is the mental health Bible here in the United States, it was studied for 5 years by the American Psychiatric Association. After rigorous study, they realized that there's no way that they can call it sex addiction. They could call it porn addiction. Not only did they not include it in the DSM, they removed it from the appendix because that model is actually causing many people harm. In fact, the American Association for Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists are on record calling that treatment model negligent. Essentially, they said it falls beneath the standard of care. So that's significant. That's important. That's why we're talking about it today. Take it away, man. Let's dive in.
Sure. Just want to add to that, that here in Europe, where I reside, it's also not recognized in ICD-11 in our mental health Bible. So, you know, now we're working on 11th revision of ICD, and the proposed terminology is compulsive sexual behavior disorder. And if it's going, there's high chance it's going to be there, but it's going to be associated with impulse control disorders like pyromania, for example, or kleptomania, when somebody is stealing stuff impulsively. So a totally different type of issue than addiction, right? When you are basically, you know, you have to stop, you have to be sober, and so on. It is in a totally different category, and the treatment will be very different as well. So
good point. And one quick quick point: the ICD stands for the International Classification of Diseases. It is on its 11th edition, and it is developed annually and updated by the World Health Organization. So there's a lot of, you know, really smart people saying, hold up, calling it a disease and the diseasification of this problem isn't serving you. And we're going to find out why now.
Exactly. Well, so I wanted to discuss different root causes of compulsive sexual behavior. So you people who are interested in that topic, people who want to expand knowledge or who want to heal, can make better informed decisions in terms of your own therapy and your own healing. That's my main goal with this podcast. And in order to achieve that, I made a couple examples for each of those root causes to show you guys and girls how are those root causes different from one another, and how people who are struggling with those root causes are different types of people, basically. So the first example that I want to bring up is somebody who has issues with anxiety, issues with impulsivity, not being able to manage and control feelings very well, and especially with high anxiety. Very often there is this high need to soothe yourself, right? To soothe yourself somehow so you can function, so you can cope with reality, right? And it can come, again, from many different circumstances. It may be traumatic childhood, it may be just, you know, anxiety in family in general, chaotic environment, traumatic events, genetic as well. Yes, high sensitivity. And of course, environment, like now, you know, with the rise of social media, Facebook, Twitter, anxiety and depression skyrocketed among teenagers. So it's a very common thing. And I think there is no coincidence in that being also compared with the porn use among teenagers, which is also higher than it was before. It's also growing, and the problem with porn is growing. So, you know, the first example is that kind of person who struggles with anxiety and managing feelings and coping. And every time that person feels anxious, that person has to masturbate, or feels compelled to masturbate, or feels compelled to act out with other people, to reach out to somebody, to watch, you know, webcam, to sext. to go on Tinder and find a date for the night, or to go to massage parlor and so on, right? So the main reason behind that is anxiety, and the aim is to soothe yourself so you can be calm and you can function and, keep working, keep studying, whatever that is. Very often I hear from guys, I just had to do it, otherwise it would bother me the whole day and I will not be able to work, I will not be able to study, I will not be able to do what I need to do. So if that's like the main reason and the only reason somebody is acting out, and very rarely this is the only reason, but if that is it, I would name it a compulsive sexual behavior disorder, right? So this is related with anxiety, related with poor impulse control, and it leads to sexual acting out as a way of soothing yourself, as a way of managing the feelings, maybe in a bit unskillful way, but still we're trying to do something good, but it doesn't create good results for us.
Is this the category, Adrian, that OCD would fall under?
Yes, exactly. So I would like people who are struggling, OCD is also anxiety related, right?
Yeah.
So it also comes from anxiety. So people who are struggling with OCD, who are struggling with generalized anxiety disorder, who are struggling with panic attacks, social anxiety, all of those people, I would put in that category of a client who struggles with anxiety related issues in general and uses acting out as a soothing activity to lower the anxiety, or to just like rituals in OCD, you perform those rituals in the same way over and over again, and it's very similar to what people do sometimes with porn.
Very similar. I see that. I don't know, often might be too strong a word, but certainly those OCD-ish tendencies. And my anecdotal experience is that I see that more with younger people who were raised on pornography. And I wonder if that soothing leading to an OCD is, getting worse as porn becomes the coping strategy of choice for a lot of young men and women. So anyway, that's just anecdotal evidence, curious to see where that goes to, but I really connect with that OCD piece. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Sure. And just to mention, what I'm speaking about here also comes from my clinical experience. So it's also anecdotal data. There are still, of course, researchers that are trying to, understand this topic much better. Some of them are actually from Poland, from my country. There's a big group of researchers in Polish National Academy of Science that are actually studying the topic of compulsive sexual behavior. So we're trying to understand it better, but what I'm trying to discuss now comes from practical, I would say, understanding and from my own clinical experience.
Yeah. And it's important for people to understand. And what we hope you do is, well, maybe you'll join the Mindful Habit and then work with Adrian, work with me, and work with George. But if you're in therapy now, you can take this information, get on the Google, figure out which one you connect with. And it is so important, critically important, for you to be proactive in your care. And that's true for medical issues. That's true for psychiatric issues, for mental health issues. If I wasn't proactive in my physical issues, I would be listening to the one doctor who's giving me bad advice. I'd be stuck there. I was depressed. I was suicidal, managing my pain. So unrelated, but it is very important for you to take the reins. This is your life. If something's not working for you, you fix it. You fix it. So hopefully you'll have some more information here that you can use to help you live a better life.
Yes. I was thinking, like in this case, very often it's like scratching an itch, that there's something in the back of your head, that it's almost like, an itch that you need to scratch, and there is this, I would say, ritualization. So you may be collecting things obsessively, you're seeking for a perfect scene, and you do it in a very ritualized manner, as part of your routine in the day, right? And if you don't do that, then you have a lot of anxiety and a lot of very difficult feelings coming up. If that comes up, that may be suggesting, it doesn't mean that you have OCD, but it may be suggesting that part of what you're struggling with is anxiety related, and you have to follow a treatment that addresses anxiety.
Yes.
And anxiety related disorders. All right, so now we can move on to the next example. Some of them may be quite difficult for you guys if you are struggling with this, because I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm going to say how it is, and you can use that knowledge, in any way that that's fitting you. But the second example is, guys who are struggling, let's say, with, a foot fetish, right, or some other type of fetish or kink, right, and they may be, because of their religious upbringing, there may be ashamed to share that with their partner. Let's say that they have a dedicated partner, a wife or husband, and because of their religious upbringing, it's hard for them to bring that topic up. They have a lot of shame around this fetish or kink they developed usually in childhood or teenage years, right? So that part of themselves becomes something secret and becomes almost like a second life.
Yeah, a lot of shame, right?
Right. So there is no acceptance of those preferences, and usually the mindset there is, I need to get rid of that fetish, or I need to get rid of this addiction, right, quote unquote. So many of those guys are going to sex addiction treatment centers or therapists, and they end up suffering even more later on, because, like we discussed in a 5 layers of sexuality episode, you can't get rid of fetish. You can broaden your preferences, but you can't get rid of the fetish.
Let me I want to pause there just for a second, Adrian. I want to say that again, so people listening, I have seen more damage done here with clients who previously saw Christian counselors, for example. I don't mean to pick on them, but they had no capacity for helping someone understand their fetish, embrace it, and direct it in a way that's healthy for them. Fetishes cannot be erased.
Yes. So that's why, it's not very effective to focus your healing on that, right? To try to get rid of it. And what happens if you can't get rid of something very often is that this kind of client, this kind of person tries to suppress it. And what you resist persists, right? We talk a lot about that. So, you may be struggling with moments of, I would say, total disinterest in any sexuality at all. You suppressed your fetish so well that you are disgusted by it. You can't even look at the fetishistic porn, you can't go back to it. And then after some time, a week, a month, couple months, because this sexual preference is still there and the tension in you is arising, you end up relapsing and binge watching, right? Let's say fetishistic porn, or you end up going somewhere and crossing your boundaries, becoming out of control, basically, with this topic. So, if you're that kind of a client, please do not consider yourself addicted to having sex with prostitutes or addicted to watching porn. Consider yourself as somebody who has sexual integrity issues. How is that different? Sexual integrity issues are related with your judgment of your own sexual preferences, your own sexual self. It means that you have a certain moral or certain judgment, right? Moral judgment, let's say, or certain perception of your sexuality that's not really fitting the reality. It's not really fitting up to what's going on in your sexuality since many years. And because of shame, because of that judgment, you don't allow yourself, like Craig said, to embrace this preference, to embrace your sexual self authentically, and to find a healthy way of including that part of yourself in your sexual life with your partner, in your relationship, and that leads to out of control behaviors, that leads to crossing boundaries, that leads to divorces very often, that leads to a lot of problems. So if you are noticing that you can't accept one of your preferences, and that's why you keep coming back to porn, because you can't discuss it with anybody, because you can't really embrace it, well, maybe a way forward is to work with somebody that could help you understand it and embrace it better.
Yeah, in a healthy way, in a way that improves your life. There's so many ways to channel and direct this energy instead of the behaviors that result from the shame building. Then there's a rupture of a sexual explosion of behavior that makes the person feel so bad about themselves, starting the cycle over and over and over again. This is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. We've had people choose not to work with us because of this position. I'll tell you, Adrian, I have so many, but one of my proudest cases was this Christian man, beautiful man. I hope he's listening. He had a foot fetish, and he had seen therapist after therapist after therapist trying to cure him. And, he saw me, found me online. I'm like, so what? So what? And I got his wife on the phone, and she had all the shame, and because the behavior manifested in such a self-destructive way that was in secret and ruining his marriage. And they were able to create healthy sexuality. It certainly wasn't easy. There were a lot of hurdles that we had to overcome. But the level of shame-based programming and treatment that this couple received was an abomination. It's the kind of things that make us angry, Adrian, when we hear it happening. It was traumatizing to hear about, let alone live through. Keep going. What's next?
Yes. You bring up such a great point that sometimes it's also a work with couple that has to be done, right? So the whole relationship has to embrace this new reality when you're honest and open about your sexuality and you don't live in shame. So sometimes it's important to include partner in that healing process. So great story, Craig. Thank you. That's really awesome to hear that you were able to work through this with this guy. So another example is, let's say, somebody that loves getting attention from women.
Guilty.
Right, same. Loves that idea of flirting, of maybe connecting for a moment, but a person who really has hard time dedicating themselves to just one partner, right? And even though, let's say that type of client wants to be in a monogamous relationship or is in dedicated monogamous relationship with his wife or husband, right? That person struggles with a lot of fear around dedication and attachment in general, just attaching yourself, being close with one person, being intimate, opening up, being vulnerable, because it was never modeled in his childhood. It was never modeled, never shown by the parents how to connect, how to feel comfortable with love and closeness and acceptance, right? So that kind of a client will try to avoid that intimacy in many different ways. And I mentioned this attention and flirting because very often it takes this form of I'm a player. I'm going just to, have a couple women, that I just deceive, right? And I'm going to play a bit with them, but I'm not going to dedicate myself to one person. I'm not going to spend whole life shackled by, by my marriage or whatever, right? So that kind of mindset very often is associated with huge fear surrounding intimacy and connection and attachment to somebody. And if that's the case, right, and being engaged with just one person terrifies us, even though, and that's important, that's the key thing here, even though we truly want to connect with one person, that we know this is our deep down need, that we would like to have this healthy, deep connection with somebody, with one person that we have chosen, but we cannot because of that fear, then this is an attachment issue, right? It's an attachment issue. It's not a problem with sexuality. It's problem with how intimacy was modeled, how attachment developed over time. And then, you know, we have to keep our distance, right? And we use different things. We use acting out to keep our distance because we're afraid of that closeness, or we are lying, yes, deceiving, hiding, not sharing, being defensive, you know, being a macho man always, never showing feelings, right? Like all those strategies just to avoid connection, just to avoid attachment, vulnerability. So attachment, there are different attachment styles. I think we talked about it some time ago. But you know, if there is unsafe attachment, we never were taught that a person on the other side, you know, a parent in that case, will be receptive to our needs and really fulfill our needs as a child. And we don't see that also in relationship with our parents. There's no closeness that's modeled very well for us. And we're going to develop unsafe attachment style, which means that we're not going to feel very safe with one person close to us, attached to one person in specific. We may not miss anybody. We will miss things, objects, places, routines much more than people. So if that's the case, the treatment should be focused on treating what you call, Craig, very often an intimacy disorder and those attachment issues that we have, you know, and forming a new way of relating with people that's based on safe attachment, that's based on creating sense of safety and happiness when we become vulnerable and when we actually connect with the other person. That's a lengthy process, but worthwhile.
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting too is that these, you know, attachment issues are so deeply entrenched. You need someone skilled with the ability to be able to help you unpack the programming, the family of origin contributions. Why do you have walls up? Why do you hide behind the mask of toxic masculinity? Why are you a pathological liar? And so often, you know, this behavior, the lying, it's doing a number of things, but it's also protecting us from forming that deeper attachment because we don't have the programming to do it. So it's, you know, listen, it's every one of these issues is important to understand if you want to solve the problem, you know?
Yes, definitely. But this one, I would say, it's like a underlying issue that most of my clients show. So, and it requires really a skilled counselor, therapist, coach, somebody that really, like you said, really knows how to uncover this programming and how to tear down those walls. It's not easy. I would say it's very hard to change those things, but this is possible. Studies have shown that our attachment style can be reworked in adulthood. We can change that through our relationships with other people in adulthood. So it can be changed, but it's a very deeply rooted thing. So it requires a lot of work and a lot of bravery, I think, to change that. And commitment issues, big thing. Many guys struggling with commitment issues. It's all attachment related, right? So if you are that kind of a person that maybe would like to have deep connection with one person, but it's really hard for you. Once you connect with somebody, they become uninteresting for you, or you start watching porn again, you know, because you realize that this is just too close and you have to escape somehow. That may be main thing that you need to work on.
Or they become mother. They become parent. They become controlling. The projection of authority is present in every client. Often that projection of authority, and this is for, you know, clients in a relationship, often that projection of authority is mother, sometimes father too, but that's what sits at the root of these attachment issues, is how we learned to bond and how we learned to connect. Very, very important, you know, critical issues to be aware of if you want to break these habits.
Yes. Mother, primary attachment figure, always, right? This is the person that we always connect with first. So that's always going to take some priority. Okay, so another type of client or another type of issue I want to discuss here is connected with something that is much harder to change, but I still want to say something about it. So let's say that a client, the person that I'm talking about, is a master manipulator. He uses people as prompts for his or her self-esteem. What I mean by that is that people are there in order to serve a certain purpose, in order to raise your self-esteem, in order to raise your significance. So that kind of person is never going to be with a partner that doesn't achieve as much as him, or looks bad, you know, in front of other people, or that is maybe, you know, lacking something that this kind of person attaches to self-worth, right? Or to sense of worth in general. Status, worth is a crucial thing here. You know, that kind of person very often is having very hard time with empathy, never cared much nor felt affect emotionally by his acting out. Most of those clients feel really good after acting out. They feel that, you know, nothing bad happened. It feels pleasurable, and because of that, it is okay. It is okay to do. And that kind of mindset connected with like mood swings, you know, with low self-worth, self-loathing, and then, you know, switching to sense of grandiosity, struggling with idea of purpose in life, knowing who you are, what's your identity, you know, what are your goals, you know, what are your boundaries, having hard time understanding what are you feeling even, or thinking, or regulating those feelings. Huge, what in psychology we call shadow, right? So things that are unconscious are, you know, stored in the shadow, and this huge shadow is there very often in this type of person. So when that happens, we may suspect that there are some deeper personality issues at play, you know, that there may be either a personality disorder happening, or that there are some traits coming from personality disorder, because sometimes somebody has strong narcissistic traits, but it's not a clinical narcissist, and we have to make a difference between those two things. So person with personality disorder usually lacks self-awareness that will lead to treatment at all. It's very rare that those people come to any therapist for treatment. Usually it's like caused by huge crises in life, and, you know, it's very rare. So in most cases,
if they do, they don't last long, right, Adrian?
No,
if they do,
yes.
They typically don't, like, because we've had some of these clients very difficult. I'm unable to treat. That being said, don't be scared by these terms. Most people don't fall into you know, the official designation of a narcissist, but many of us exhibit narcissistic like tendencies, and that I can get on board with.
Yes, narcissistic traits or borderline traits, you know, or other, you know, other traits coming from different personality disorders. So, you know, in that case, you know, this issue of those personality traits, you know, connected with some disorders or of personality disorder has to be treated first and foremost, right? It's about finding somebody, and this is like the, you know, if you can think about Mount Everest of therapy, that's Mount Everest of therapy. You have to find like the best skilled clinician, probably, you know, in your area, in order to really work well with personality disorder. And he has to be a specialist in this particular personality disorder as well, if you want good treatment. You know, if that's the case, you know, you have to really focus on that. You know, the focusing on symptoms will do nothing. You have to start forming, with extensive therapy work, forming that sense of identity, forming those boundaries slowly, understanding your defense mechanisms, understanding, you know, what you like, what you don't like, understanding what you feel, and developing slowly some skills also to understand other people, where they are coming from, some empathy. And like you said, you know, sometimes those are just traits, so it's a bit easier to work with that, and it doesn't take years and years and years, and best specialists on the planet, but it's so important to understand that many of us have those traits and we can't overlook them. We have to work on them. We have to find a way to deal with those topics. Otherwise, they will keep biting us in the ass. And our relationships can't be good if we are in this category. Yeah, they will not look well.
And as we're going through this list, I'm reminded how important the parts work is, whether it's with the internal family systems model or whether it's the way we teach our parts. It's a really effective way. If you listening don't know what the internal family systems model is, I highly recommend you check it out. Obviously, this is something that we cover in our programs extensively. That work is so important to help you understand these different parts of you that feel in conflict, that feel addicted, that feel disconnected, that feel self-loathing, that feel angry, et cetera, et cetera. That's where these personality traits live in our different parts, and understanding them can, hopefully bring you great value.
Definitely. I think that, I probably won't be able to cover all of those root causes today. There are probably many more that I won't bring up, but the last one that I wanted to bring up today is related to something that I call a relationship mismatch. And now here it's very important to not just jump to that conclusion right away, that because you don't have great sex life or you are feeling angry at your partner, you have a relationship mismatch, because it may be coming from all those other issues we mentioned before. So, we first have to look at, okay, are those other things non-existent in my life? Am I having no issues with anxiety disorders? Am I feeling okay in terms of my sexual integrity? Am I doing well? And it's easy for me to be empathetic, and I'm not manipulating people, but I still struggle with sexuality in my relationship. If that's the case, it may be that you are having a relationship mismatch. So what are the situations where that's coming up? Well, let's say that one person has a very high sex drive, high testosterone. Let's say that's a guy who has high testosterone. He wants to have sex. Biologically, he's wired to have sex, say every day or every second day. And there is a partner that has really low libido, right? Low sex drive, maybe sex once a month, right? And if it's there, quite dissatisfying, not very passionate because of just the libido, right? That it's not so important for that person to have, really intense sexual experiences, maybe low on their priority list because of hormones, probably, growing up, different programming that they received. Doesn't matter, in that kind of situation, maybe that this is leading to frequent fights about sex. One person feels pressured to have sex all the time. The other person feels frustrated. And this other person may start reaching to other people, cheating. Or this other person may start watching porn a lot instead of having sex with their partner. Or the partner may have an issue that, okay, you want sex all the time, you're an addict. Well, the fact is that high libido doesn't mean that you have a problem with compulsive sexual behavior. High libido means that you have high libido, you just have high needs when it comes to sexuality. High in terms of frequency, I mean, not in terms of how it looks like. But it can be also related with like one person being really into BDSM and the other person not being into that at all, right? Yeah. And in that kind of scenario, of course, we're talking about sexual mismatch. I would define it as relationship mismatch, that this discrepancy between partners, this difference between them leads to some behaviors that are breaching certain boundaries that partners set for themselves as healthy within the relationship. And in that kind of situation, well, what can be done, right? Usually the first thing that guys think about is, well, maybe I should leave that person and just have somebody that's a better fit. I don't think that should be the first thing that you think about, actually. I think that the first thing should be to find out if there is a way, again, just like with a sexual integrity issue, if there is a way to talk about those discrepancies and differences and find a healthy way of embracing them, a creative way where, you know, nobody feels pressured, but your behaviors are, you know, are healthy within the boundaries of relationship, right? So maybe that one person decides, okay, I don't want to have sex with you every single day, but if you masturbate and fantasize about me instead of like watching porn or sexting with prostitutes, that's fine, right? And it's about finding that middle ground. Very often we can find that middle ground that works for both people. If that is not a possibility, then the only healthy option is to actually change relationship, right? If you don't want to stay in that Mexican standoff type of situation, you know, you need to find out, okay, it may work on many other levels, but this one thing we can't find that common ground, and I don't want to cheat. I don't want to keep watching porn every single day. I really want somebody that's having same type of libido, same type of sex drive, same type of interest in sexuality as me, and I'm going to pursue that. And I don't think that's a wrong choice, but it should be, in my eyes, in my set of values, it should be the choice that we consider at the very end when other options are not viable.
And you know what? Some of the saddest cases, Adrian, are a religious man or woman, because this goes both ways, where masturbation is religiously banned.
Right.
So the man or the women believe it is a sin to express themselves sexually that way. Yet they have this elephant in the room, and you've heard this. Sometimes we start working with somebody and we talk about we work mostly with men. This of course goes both ways. And I find out the couple hasn't had sex in 7 years. Right. And they've been in addiction treatment. Like, this is one of these things that make you want to pull your hair out of your head, because these people are being so misled. They're not acknowledging that elephant in the room, and they're unwilling, unfortunately. And I respect people's beliefs, but I don't think God cares if people masturbate or not. Just my opinion. The word's not mentioned once in the Bible. And they don't have that out. They don't have that out. And it is a very, very difficult and very, very sad existence for those couples. And I really, really feel for them. And I hope we can, shift their thinking and get them thinking about creative alternatives. And this is another area where we see so many people being served in a poor way, in a harmful way, in a way that is actually making their life worse by treating their problem as an addiction because they have a high libido.
Right, exactly. And like you said, the masturbation is not an option, then many of those creative middle grounds that I talked about are not there. So it's just you're stuck in the situation where your body tells you that it needs sexual outlet each single day, but there is no sexual outlet till next month. Or you mentioned 7 years, that's quite extreme, but even if that's just once a month, for many people, it's like definitely not enough. And what happens is you probably try to starve yourself, you try to discipline yourself, you try to willpower through this. And then after some time, you just break and you reach out to somebody, you start talking with somebody, you start masturbating a lot, like something happens, because it's like our sexual energy is like a river that's flowing through our body. We can't really put a dam on it, and say, well, that's going to hold forever. It will not hold forever.
It will not hold forever. And it is why I have the expression that your sexual energy has to go somewhere.
Yes.
And I encourage people to be really intentional about where that energy goes. Damming it up will only lead to frustration, anger, sadness, pain, and ultimately the dam will break.
Yes.
Ultimately, the dam will break.
Resentment, blame, placed on the partner. It's also not your partner's fault that she has a different libido than you.
That's right.
Right. So you shouldn't blame the other person as well, and you shouldn't be resentful towards that person. It's just a matter of, biology. Somebody has, let's say somebody has is taller or has a different type of hair color, and somebody is shorter. It's also a matter of biology. So you either accept your partner as they are and you try to find a way to make it work, or you don't. And I think this is an important point where some couples struggles, and I see many of those guys who actually don't have compulsive issues. They're quite well functioning in life, but they have that relationship mismatch, and they cannot manage it because of different topics that we discussed before.
Yeah, they don't have the outlet that other men don't have, and to their detriment. And so this, it's and you know what's interesting about all these different issues, that it's often not just one. There are often multiple, facet, like a diamond, with its different faces, different facets, and there's often multiple drivers of the symptom being what people call compulsive sexual behavior.
Yeah, exactly right. It's not that you are, usually I would say most of people we work with, and then ourselves as well, right? We have multiple of those things going. And I had to address each one of those things separately, actually, and work through them really, really hard in coaching, in therapy for some time, in order to really move past those problems. And I need to continue be aware of those topics and keep working on them and keep managing them well if I don't want to go back to those behaviors, right? So the same goes to anybody else in recovery.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adrian, so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add today? This was an awesome broadcast. I'm so excited to share this with people. I hope you listening out there, you took some notes. Go back and listen to it again. If you heard something that resonated with you, write it down, Google it, research it. Open your mind to different perspectives beyond the narrow lens of the sex addiction model. It's absolutely critical if you want to be healthy, happy, and successful.
Well, I just want to add that if you have some questions or your topic wasn't discussed, but you feel that this is the main issue behind your acting out, feel free to reach out to me at adrian@themindfulhabit.com. Send me an email, ask any questions possible, describe your situation. I will try to help you to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, Adrian is an incredibly skilled treatment provider. I am so honored to have him on my team. He brings a level of complexity, a level of depth that I don't have. I love the fact that I go to you now asking you questions about some of these more complicated sexual issues and psychological issues. That's what makes the team here at The Mindful Habit so awesome. Thank you very much for joining us today, Adrian, and everyone out there. Thank you for listening. I hope you create healthy sexuality and a great life, and I hope this podcast helped you get there. Have an awesome day. Bye.